Hello and welcome to this week's BizSmart Lunch and Learn webinar. Our weekly webinars are aimed to provide advice and share knowledge amongst business owners. If you would like to keep up to date on our latest webinars, please make sure you follow us on SlideShare or subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can access all of our resources for business owners just by leaving us a comment. Our host joining me today is BizSmart Core Advisor and Select Member Louise Blunt. But before we start the webinar, can I ask you all to use the question mark function on your screen to post any questions that you may have for Louise, and she will do her best to answer them all at the end of the session. Thank you, Louise. Over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm just going to give you a quick run through the idea of continuous improvement for small business. It's a subject that's very close to my heart. It's a subject that I was highly involved in all my years in manufacturing. So here we go. Objectives for today would really be just, some of you may remember, and it was a while ago, that I did an introduction to Lean. And as continuous improvement is a key part of Lean, I just thought I'd just a couple of slides as a Lean refresher. Then I'm going to look at defining continuous improvement, or Kaizen, and some of the principles that are involved. Using it in practice as opposed to the theory, because obviously, really for small business, we're more interested in how we can make it work for us. And then I'm going to just pick up on 2 or 3 simple tools that you might be able to use in your own organisations to help you implement the cycle of continuous improvement. So just going back to where we were before, what is Lean? Well, it's a way of thinking. So it's a business philosophy, if you like, and it's that fundamental approach to running a business. And it revolves really around looking at the whole company and working out how to make it more effective. So many organisations, whether they be big or small, get themselves into this silo mentality where they're only really looking at one aspect of the business at a time. And Lean is really fundamentally about bringing the whole organisation together and looking at ways in which you can improve your profitability, deliver things better for customers, make better products. And so fundamentally, it's all about the customer. So again, just some Lean fundamentals just as a refresher. So it's about everyone, and this is something that I have always been very, very keen on. I really don't believe that the answers to business problems lie solely with the management team. You want some answers, you go out and ask the people that are actually doing the job. So it's really about respecting them, engaging them, and involving them at all levels in an organisation. And that applies whether you're a big company or a small company. It's about putting your systems so that they work for each other and with each other, and that goes back to the silo mentality. You know, sometimes you have to make big changes in one area of your business, and that area of your business has to work harder. But if overall it improves the efficiency of your business, then that is absolutely the right thing to do. Obviously, one of the Lean fundamentals is continuous improvement, or Kaizen, and we're going to come on to that. And then we're going to have a look at how it links in with the other ideas of reducing waste, improving value. And Lean absolutely is a long-term approach. I would never advise anybody just to dip in and out of it. It's something that if you work on it with your employees, if you get together and really engage them, it's a very, very powerful tool. So, what are the fundamentals of continuous improvement? Well, we talked about before about Lean being a never-ending journey. So this is where continuous improvement comes in. It is a journey of continuous improvement. And very much so, it's not just about, companies that are struggling or companies that need to make fundamental improvements. Continuous improvement works phenomenally for companies that are actually successful. And it also helps to avoid the issues of either getting stale or getting complacent in what you do. If you have this idea of continuous improvement, that you are always striving to make things better, then you will continue to keep yourselves at the top of the tree. So continuous improvement, Kaizen, it's what you're looking to do is it's about small improvements. So it's about looking to do something every day, seeing what you can do. Maybe you don't get to do something every day, but if you go in with the view that every day you could be looking for and finding something that's just going to make a small change to your business, then that you're operating with the idea of continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is generally not a radical change. It's just regular incremental changes. And I know that particularly when the Olympics come up, and we talk about our elite athletes, they're looking for the little 1%. They're not looking for the very big changes. They're just looking for the subtle changes to technique or process or something that they do that'll give them the little 1%, the little additional improvements that allow them to be better. And this is exactly the idea behind continuous improvement. It can be company or customer focused, and there is an element of just so that we come. I'm not going to cover it today, but there is an element of continuous improvement or Kaizen theory called Kaikaku, which deals with more radical changes. It may be something that you're interested in, and I can put on a webinar in the future. But for me, really, it's the regular small incremental change. They're looking for the small improvements that really are the ones that will help small businesses. So what's the overarching aim of continuous improvement? Well, simply it's striving for perfection. So it's always being prepared to question what you're doing and saying, can we do it better? Obviously with Lean theory, it's all about eliminating waste. And this is where you will find that all the Lean principles meld into one another and they all support each other in being able to try and make improvements for the business. It's about continually seeking ways to serve the customer better. Because I think some of the other webinars we've hosted all are talking about putting the customer at the centre of your business, customer service and customer relationships. And it is fundamental to having a successful business. So by seeking ways to better serve your customer through doing things more efficiently and more effectively within your organisation, you'll create a sustainable, thriving business. What I'd like us to remember as we're going through this, because there's a lot written about continuous improvement in Kaizen, there's an awful lot of theory behind it. And I'm not looking at all that theory in detail. What I'm looking at it is through small business eyes. So I won't be sticking rigidly to the whole process. That's too onerous for ourselves. Just picking out some of the highlights and some of the tools that I think we can use and adapt in small businesses to help us identify the changes that we need to make. Now I'm moving my slide. Oh. Right, okay, so where do we start? Well, we start with the definition. Kaizen, continuous improvement. As with a lot of these original theories, they come from the Japanese. And Kai means to change, and Zen, to see or gain wisdom from doing. So combining that, it's a change for the better or continuous improvement. And I have to say, I find Kaizen much easier to say over and over again than continuous improvement. Even though those of you who know me know I really don't like jargon, Kaizen is actually quite one that I can live with. So what is Kaizen? I've mentioned before, it actually becomes a way of life. It's a regular daily activity. It's something that you are constantly looking to do. Something that in an ideal world you would build into your business philosophy and your business ideas. It's all about process and results. And by that I mean, you're looking at each process, but you are looking at the overall results for the business. You're looking at the big picture, not just the individual issue. So sometimes dealing with the individual issue means you will make it more complicated in order to make it easier for the rest of the business. It's very much about putting people first. And when I talk about eliminating hard work, well, we all have to work hard in our businesses in order to make them succeed. But sometimes we just do things that because we've always done them, or because that's the way you were taught to do it, or that's the way It just happens. And this is all about taking a step back and having a look at what you're doing and taking out the stuff that actually you don't really need to be doing. Fundamental to Kaizen is this business about blame or judgment. You know, you're dealing with people. It's all about getting people to work together. And if we have the blame and the judgment culture, it does bring very negative responses from organisations, and essentially it's very wasteful. It does involve everybody. It's not a management fad. It's not a top-down issue. It's very much a case of bringing all together, and that for me is a fundamental part of running a business. And it goes to the source of the problem. I'll touch on this later. It's no good sitting in your ivory tower. If you want to make these sorts of changes, you need to be going to where the change needs to happen, or to the process itself, and looking at what's happening. Okay, so just wanted to cover some key principles here, and I'm going to credit KaiNexus for 6 of these. So if you want to look them up on the internet, you'll find that they have some quite interesting things to say about continuous improvement. So if we take principle 1, very much think about this. Improvements are based on small changes. Very important, partly because large changes often feel frightening, they can feel destabilizing, and if we approach the whole process with the idea of small incremental steps, continuous improvement, it reduces the fear factor, and interestingly, it increases the speed of the improvement. So when you're following these kind of principles, the organisation doesn't need to wait for a strategic shift or a new product to begin to advance. You can be doing it all the time. Principle 2, and one of them, this for me is one of the very, very key principles, is ideas come from employees. Okay, we as managers, we have our ideas and our theories, and we're there because we know what we're talking about usually. But actually, we can sometimes get either divorced from the day-to-day aspects of the business, or we can become blind to them in the fact that we're so busy trying to run our businesses that we lose sight of some of the things. One thing you can be sure of is your staff never lose sight of the things that they're doing day in, day out. So we're thinking here very much about the value of engaging staff. So it's about asking everyone in the organisation for ideas to create new products or revolutionise the way they look after their customers or after each other. They are focused on their day-to-day work. They won't necessarily come up with monumental ideas, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for these small incremental changes. So ask the people in your organisation, or ask yourself, what improvement they could make that would save them 5 minutes a day. And then fundamentally empower them to implement that improvement. And then spread it to everyone else in the organisation, because very often something that one person is doing can be adapted and developed for somebody else in the organisation. So you can take one small idea that anyone could come up with and drive a very big impact. For instance, let's say you've got just to give you an idea of the level of impact, I just ran some numbers before coming to do this webinar. So if you ask people for a small idea that shaves 5 minutes off their day, and then propagate their ideas in an organisation that employs 10 people, over a year, the ideas of those 10 people saving 5 minutes a day would save 234 days. That's one extra person a year. That's quite some staggering numbers. So principle 3, it kind of goes without saying, doesn't it? Incremental improvements are typically inexpensive to implement. So, and this is something that has been evidenced over time, that employees tend to focus on small changes that can be accomplished without a lot of expense. And in fact, in many cases, employees are coming up with ways to eliminate processes rather than add to them, which ties in very much with the the wastes idea. So it's an excellent way to ensure that every activity adds some value to the customer and reduces wasted effort. And as with the example I gave above, the effect is often exponential. So not only are the ideas inexpensive to implement, but they can also have a huge impact on your bottom line. Principle 4, employees take ownership and are accountable for improvement. If you adopt the bottom up, not top down, if they've thought of the issue, if they've come up with an idea, then they're already well invested in making it work. You don't have to manage them, micromanage them, get out the whip. They're already invested in that. And they intrinsically see the value of the changes that they're making. So it's a really powerful tool. It's about building trust, and it's about really creating an organisation in which everybody plays their part and has a huge part to play. So empowering them to take control of their own work, to identify opportunities, to implement the improvements, as you can see, would be a very powerful tool. And the continuous improvement model relies on this idea. So principle 5 is improvement is reflective. So it's constant feedback is an important aspect of the improvement model. So it's encouraging open communication during every phase, and that you are working with them and giving them the feedback and encouraging them on forward. And interestingly, for me, for smaller organisations with fewer levels of management, you're more flexible, and therefore often this business of having that two-way communication stream is much easier to manage. Staff can get help from you without having to wait for weekly meetings or emails or whatever, so you get to the changes much more quickly. Principle 6, you can't simply make a change and call it an improvement. You need to be able to measure it, and hopefully from there it needs to be potentially repeatable, so that you can use these small changes, as I said, to make bigger and bigger improvements in your business. So from that point of view, in terms of looking at those 6 principles, it's really making continuous improvement part of a company's culture. The 7th principle is one that I feel very strongly about, and if you actually look into the idea of continuous improvement, it's very much part and parcel of what you do, and that is observe, don't assume. Don't sit in your ivory tower. One of my favourite management tools is Goya, and anybody who's talked to me before will have come across this, which is essentially get off your arse and go and see how it works. Don't assume you know what's going on. Get the people involved that are actually doing it, and get them to help you to make the changes that need to be made. Why does it work? Well, hopefully, just through talking about it and just sort of looking at some of the principles, you'll see that it's not rocket science. And very much, as I said to you before, you could very easily go into a lot of theory and go really deeply into these kind of models. And if that's for you, then please do. But I'm very conscious that in small businesses, what we really need to do is pick up some simple principles. And what I have always operated them with is this very large dose of common sense. You are probably doing continuous improvement things every day without really thinking about it. What I would encourage you to do is recognise that fact and do more of it. So let's have a quick look at continuous improvement in practice, and looking again at some tools. So continuous improvement is all about eliminating waste in the value stream, and the value stream is something I mentioned last time very briefly. Value stream mapping. This is where I begin to get a little fed up. Value stream mapping is simply a new name for process mapping. What it involves is looking at the process that you are interested in improving and just mapping what goes on. It can be made incredibly complicated. It doesn't need to be. It's a simple tool, and on the next slide I'm just going to give you a quick example of it. it is very much applicable across the whole organisation. I know originally it was essentially used in manufacturing processes, but actually you will see it can be applied to any area of the business, whether that be something that you make, whether it be an office process. All of these processes can be subject to a process map. And one of the critical things it will enable you to do is identify bottlenecks. So it's a little bit busy, this slide, but hopefully you'll be able to see and understand. This is just a simple visual map that maps the flow of steps, delay, information required. So you start by looking at the process you want to look at and map the steps. So here we are going from order to delivery of a widget. So as you can see there, the customer places the order over the internet. The producer produces the order, orders the materials from suppliers. The supplier ships the material. Then they produce the widget. Then there's a bit of inspection at the end. It goes into storage. It gets packed. It gets shipped into that part of the business, and then it gets actually transported to the individual, and the customer receives the product 30 days after they ordered it. And the customer's going, why on earth does it take 30 days? Why does it take 30 days to get that from there to there? So then you go back and you say, okay, well, so the customer places the order over the internet. Well, that's 3 minutes in this instance. Then you produce the order the materials, and that takes you 15 minutes. But it takes 2 weeks for all those materials to be shipped to you. And then you've got the shipping, which is 2 days in transit. And then you make the widget, and actually it only takes you an hour to make the widget, but you've got 10 days of queuing time in the production process. It takes 10 minutes to inspect it. It takes 10 minutes to put it into storage, to do the inventory checking and all the rest of it, but it takes 2 days for it to find its way through that particular forest. And then you're shipping it, it takes 2 days, and then the customer receives it. So if you break that down into actually the value added time, where you're actually adding value to it, that's an hour and 25 minutes. But the whole elapsed time was 30 days. So what you're doing there is you're taking a look at it and you're saying, well, where can I reduce the elapsed time? Where can I speed up the process? What can I do better in order to get that product to the customer quicker and more effectively? And I'm not fooling anybody. What we're not trying to do is reduce the elapsed time down to zero. It would be physically impossible. But if you can take just a few hours out here and there, your turnaround time in terms of your cash flow improves. All kinds of other things improve in terms of managing your business. So that's just a simple value stream map. But a map is just a map, and it's what you do with it that's important. So in terms of what we're talking about here in terms of Kaizen and Lean, is that you're looking at your map and you're looking at the areas and you're trying to eliminate the various wastes. Now, I'm not going to go massively through this. We touched on this last time, but the wastes clearly, transportation, so between processes, well, we identified a few of those in our little example. Waiting or idle time, well, we identified some of that. Overproduction, and what we mean by that is you're producing more than the customer requires or more often than the customer requires. Then there's defects, well, we covered how we're managing that in inspection. There is the stock element. The more stock you are holding, something in stock is not adding value to anything. So reducing your stock levels can be a real benefit to your business, increasing your turnaround time. Movement within a process, and that could be something as simple as something that you're doing on your desk, shuffling papers around, moving things around on your desk over and over again. Extra work that isn't required by the customer, so that's putting in extra details or things that the customer doesn't need. And of course, people being your most valuable asset, you're looking at reducing the underutilization or increasing the utilization of your people. But again, that's all very well, but you need to do something about it. And one of the key elements of Kaizen or continuous improvement is the plan, do, check, act cycle. It's a continuous cycle. And what happens is that when you have looked at your value stream map, or when an idea has been placed on the table for consideration, either you get on with it and deal with it straight away if it's something that's very intuitive, and obviously there is a way of dealing with it. But if you're looking at something a little more complicated, then the first thing you would do with it is establish the baseline. What is your goal? And ask yourself the questions: what's preventing you from achieving that goal? What are your priorities? And set improvement goals and standards. Standards is something I'll come on to in a minute, because that's a key part of Kaizen and continuous improvement. So once you've established that baseline, you've decided what the goal is, and you've set some standards, you get into the doing. So you implement the actions that you've decided to do, and you make the plans to achieve the goal. Put simply, I've added the little box at the bottom. What is one step you can take toward the goal right now? So look at not trying to do 3 or 4 different things at once, because how on earth do you measure which ones had the right impact? So you're taking the one step. And then you check, monitor and measure. Find and fix. Document. Simple writing on a post-it or a piece of paper. You don't need to have a full report as to whether it worked or not. So did it work? If it did, great, do it again. If not, do something different. And then act. So evaluate, implement the lessons learned, modify as needed, standardize and stabilize what worked. So in other words, make it part of what you do on a daily basis. One of the things that can sometimes happen when you're looking at these processes is you find something that really works, and then you forget to make it part of the ongoing process. So over time, what happens is you revert back to the way you always did it, and you forget that you had this really good idea and it worked. So the plan, do, check, act is a simple tool to just help you to work through what's working, why does it work, and make sure it gets implemented on an ongoing basis. Standards are a key part of continuous improvement, and whilst it may be seen as over the top, it really is invaluable to have some form of written standards within small businesses. And it's something I often work with some of my clients on actually just creating operating standards, just creating some simple instructions about how you do things and what things should be done. It may seem like a right royal pain in the behind when you're doing it as a small business, but actually it's invaluable when you come to start to grow and you're bringing more people into the business, to have something that they can just refer to, so that you're not trying to continually train people and go over things over and over again. Everybody has an understanding of how everybody works, what their part is in the whole process, and how they can work together. So Kaizen does require standards. It looks for specifications for processes, for systems. It looks for procedures and work instructions. But in a small business, they do not have to be complicated. And just to sort of round that off, if you don't have the standards, then you can adopt the standardized do, check, act process, which really what you're looking at there is putting the standard in and then saying, well, let's do it, let's check it, and let's act on it. Very relevant to small business, but as I said before, just keep it simple. So keep it pared down, but make sure that it's working for you. And always make sure that whatever you do is measurable, so that you can see that and not just you, but the whole organization can see that you are achieving something. Those that know me know that I like to keep things simple. And one of my favorite tools is this one, 5 whys and a what. The 5 whys it's a well-known tool, and it's really about getting under the surface. When you are looking at the continuous improvement process, sometimes it's easy to go, well, why? Okay, at the first why, we've got our answer. What you will tend to find is that if you dig deeper and ask up to 5 whys, so why did that go wrong, or why did it go right? Well, why did we do that? Well, why do you think that produced what it did? And just keep digging till you can get under the skin of the problem. But then there must always be a what. So you've got the why. What are you going to do about it? And perhaps at that point you can think about using the plan, do, check, act idea. So we've talked about the great things we can do, and isn't it all marvelous and it's all running forwards, but there are always potentially problems. So what kind of problems could you come up with? And what kind of things should you be trying to avoid? Oversized projects is a key one. You try and do too much at once. Again, keep it simple, keep it pared down. You will find that you make more progress more quickly. If you've got a big project to do, just break it down into some simple bite-sized chunks. Again, people that know me have heard me talking about how you eat an elephant. Well, you eat it one bite at a time. And that's, the idea behind oversized projects. Break them down into something more manageable, something that people can really identify with and help them to move forward. Project creep is a classic one where you start off trying to address one problem and then people get pulled in a different direction. We could just do that. Hang on. And it's great. The enthusiasm is fantastic and you need to bottle that and keep it going. But try and keep each project within itself and bring another little one on to anything else that comes up. Keep it simple. Take those Kaizen tools and just use them in a pared down version that works for you. Address that one issue at a time and try and avoid, the loss of focus that comes with either people getting carried away and moving on to different projects, or the loss of focus that, it's kind of this idea of continuous improvement can sometimes become a little, I'll come on to that in a minute. And again, use the value stream mapping to prioritize the bottlenecks. And the reason why I've highlighted this as a bit of a problem is once you've addressed one bottleneck, obviously, another one will immediately pop up. So it's a case of setting people's expectations to know that, once you've addressed something, that what was not a bottleneck will now become a bottleneck. So you'll need to do the whole process all over again. So types of projects, well, they can be individual. So, typically if it's just an individual who's involving themselves, it's to do with their work area or their own performance. That tends to be low investment and there's a lot of self-implementation in there. Really powerful. As I said, it's a powerful management tool as well as a powerful business tool, because people who are allowed to take control of their destiny more tend to be more satisfied and more productive at work. And then there are obviously the group ideas. So you've got that there tend to be larger projects and more long lasting. And then you've got the management side of it where you're looking at strategic elements, admin elements and support, or you're perhaps doing it in a small work team, 2 of you, 3 of you, where you're looking at the whole team and what they do and how they interact with the rest of the organisation, not the individuals within that team. I'm not going to go into examples of projects. I think we can all get on that page. Okay, so we've looked at the 7 principles, but I'd just like to pull out some of the key things that I feel are important with continuous improvement. Go to the source of the problem, observe and don't assume. I hate assumptions because you can so easily get yourself at the wrong end, barking completely up the wrong tree. Aim for incremental improvement, and just remember that you do not have all the answers. As I said, in my years in management, I tended to find the answers were with the people that actually did the job. And you go and engage with them, they can get very excited and because they're given the opportunity. If you're doing a bigger project, please remember, try not to, or don't, it's never mind, try not to, don't just involve people who are directly involved in the where the problem lies. Make sure you're dealing with cross-functional teams. And if you're in a slightly larger organisation, say for instance you've got a problem in the manufacturing element, involve somebody from finance, involve somebody from marketing, involve somebody with different ideas and different perspectives so that they can ask the dumb questions. because the dumb questions are often the ones that actually produce the light bulb moments. If you're completely immersed in it, sometimes you cannot see the wood for the trees. So wherever possible, involve people who are not directly involved in the issue itself, where you've got a bigger project. Standardization is key. So wherever you can, try and either implement some standard processes or procedures. That is not to tie you up in knots, but it is just to give some simple rules. Life is much easier if you've got some simple rules to follow, and that everybody can follow those rules, and actually, so not only can they get it quicker, but other people can see and help people where they're going wrong. And the continual process of the 1%. We're looking for the little increments that are going to make a big difference overall. So continuous improvement is a mindset for me, and I quite like this little quote. No matter where we are or what we've achieved, we can all achieve something more, which actually comes from Lean for Dummies, but it suits me. And if you're always striving to find some way to improve, even if even if you're the best, if you're the best of the best, if you're at the top of the tree, having that continuous improvement mindset is what's going to keep you there. And what you will find over time is that you become an organisation that really thrives on progress, and where we're all in it together. I did mention earlier about just this business of the drudgery and the continuous improvement treadmill, because you can get into a situation where, oh God, we're on with continuous improvement again. So just a couple of quick tips on how you avoid the moments. In terms of leading by example, having a clear vision of the future, clear roles and responsibilities so that people know where they stand and where they sit. Identifying the terrorists, that might not be terribly politically correct, but within our organisations we often have that one person who really isn't that far on board, and we need to find ways to bring them on board. Key is to face up to problems quickly. If something's going offline, bring it back online. Don't let things move off in a different direction. Absolutely reward the right behaviours. So for those people who are really engaging and getting it, find a way to reward them. They will have different motivations, so understand what their motivations are and reward those behaviours. And above all, do what you say you will do, because one of the biggest killers of continuous improvement is if you say you will do something as a manager, or you will give somebody the responsibility or the authority or whatever to do something, and then you don't back it up. It's the biggest and quickest killer. And although theories and silly words like Kaizen, it really isn't rocket science. So just to come towards a summary, lead and manage, don't direct. Small projects, small steps. Build in standards where possible. As I said before, it can look like a pain in the arse to start with, but there are real long-term benefits to building in standards as you start to grow. Never, ever be satisfied. But not in a negative way. You can be unsatisfied in a very positive way by encouraging people to always continue to be looking for better ways to do things. It's in everybody's interest for the company to succeed. So challenge and be challenged. Be prepared to be challenged. Be prepared for people to come to you and say, I don't agree with you. And be open enough and big enough to be able to take that. Pick the right tools, as in some of the tools that we talked about, some of the other tools you may come across, and adapt them to you, and obviously picking the right people. But above all, it's about looking at the whole organisation. So don't adopt a silo mentality. Make sure that whatever you're doing, if you're making a change in one area, that it absolutely doesn't have a detrimental effect in another. It's over and over again I've seen this happen. And classically, let's take an organisation that may rely on the need for a certain amount of stock, for instance, because they're responding to disasters or whatever. I've seen a classic situation where the finance team said, we're not keeping stock because it's not effective and it's not efficient. So they reduce the stock down to nil. there's a massive flood in somewhere in the world and they have a need for their product overnight, but it takes them 6 to 10 weeks to produce the product. So that decision by finance to reduce the stock levels to nil has had a massive effect on the whole organisation. So that's why I'm talking about making sure that when you make change in one area, you're actually looking at the whole organisational effect. So just in summary, we had a look at a lean refresher. Hopefully I put it into a small business context for you. The main thing is for you to go away and have a look at some of the ideas and the thoughts behind Kaizen and continuous improvement, and looking at what makes it work for you. So adapt the tools to suit your situation. As with any of these webinars, I'm really just scratching the surface. So I would encourage you to take a deeper look. And if you want it interpreting into plain English, as sometimes is the case with some of the work on continuous improvement, just ask, you know where to find me. And above all, remember, keep it simple. Thank you very much indeed.
Great, thank you very much, Louise, for that session. You've got a couple of questions waiting for you. The first one is from Stuart, and he says, my business is only very small and I find it hard to find the time to think about this. Do you have any tips for me?
It's a good question, and you know, within small businesses we are always very, very busy. It depends on the size of your business, but at the end of the day, what you need to remember is you can't do it all. So, you know, we talked about the importance of engaging your employees. Even if you've only got 1 or 2 employees, just engage them to help you to do the things that need doing. And if you're a one-man band, well, you've got the likes of BizSmart out there who are more than willing to come out there and help you to actually sort the wood from the trees, look at the business from a different angle, and try and help you with actually getting continuous improvement into your whole philosophy. I hope that helps, Stuart.
Okay, thank you. You've got another question. This one's from Paul, and he says, from implementation, when will I start to see some results?
The old impatient question. I need it now and I want it now. That very much depends on the type of project that you are doing. You can see results the next day sometimes. You can see results instantly if it's you know, a small project that you can just implement overnight. You can see results very, very quickly from continuous improvement. If it's a slightly longer type project that involves more people, it might take you longer. But as I said before, it's important that you do have some kind of measurement so that you can see the improvements and you can communicate the improvements and celebrate the improvements with the team over a period of time.
Okay, great. Thank you again, Louise, for hosting today's webinar. I will be sending out a copy of your presentation and your contact details out very shortly, so please do email direct if you have any further questions for Louise. But just before we close, a quick reminder, if you would like to keep up to date on our latest webinars, please make sure you follow us on SlideShare and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also access all of our resources for business owners just by leaving us a comment. That's the end of today's BizSmart webinar. Thank you all for listening, and we hope you can join us again very soon. Thank you again, Louise.
Thank you.